So the Grammys, one of the biggest nights in music, happened earlier this month. All of the categories were stacked with popular artists who've released music in the past year. I wasn't planning on making a video about the Grammys because I felt like for the most part the winners weren't too controversial to me. I mainly watched it for the performances, the red carpet fashion, and to see different worlds collide, like Taylor Swift and Cynthia Erivo, or Sabrina Carpenter and Olivia allegedly hugging, or Taylor whispering in Chappell's ear. But there has been an interesting development around one winner's speech in particular, and that being Chappell Roan. So Chappell was the winner of the Best New Artist category, winning her first Grammy up against 7 other popular artists from this year like Benson Boone, Sabrina Carpenter, Doechii, Khruangbin, Ray, Shabuzi, and Teddy Swims. Chappell would have a huge blow up in popularity in early 2024. I have a whole video about that if you want to check that out. But at the Grammys, Chappell went up to the podium and accepted the award and gave a speech from her notebook. And rather than just thanking her friends and family in her speech, Chappell decided to call for change in the music industry. In Chappell's speech, she would start by complimenting all of the nominees and also thanking Dan Nigro, Island Records, Amusement Records, and her friends and family, and Chappell, who she took the stage name from. Then she would go into changes she hoped to make to the industry. I can't show the whole clip of it, so I'm just going to read her whole speech. She said, "I told myself if I ever won a Grammy and I got to stand up here in front of the most powerful people in music, I would demand that labels in industries profiting millions of dollars off of artists offer a livable wage in healthcare, especially to developing artists, because I was signed so young. I got signed as a minor, and when I got dropped, I had 0 job experience under my belt. Like most people, I had a difficult time finding a job in the pandemic and could not afford health insurance. It was so devastating to feel so committed to my art and feel so betrayed by the system and so dehumanized to not have healthcare. If my label would have prioritized artists' health, I could have been provided care by a company I was giving everything to. So record labels need to treat their artists as valuable employees with a livable wage and health insurance and protection."
Labels, we got you, but do you got us?
So Chappell used her Grammy-winning speech to shine a light on the fact that developing artists are not getting paid a livable wage and aren't provided health insurance. Chappell's message seemed pretty uncontroversial to me. Most people praised her for coming out and taking a risk and wanting to change things, and most of the public agreed with her as well. Chappell stood up for herself and saw a need that was missing in the music industry for developing artists and hoped to give them more rights or more visibility upon the rights they don't have. The public was mostly pretty supportive of her message. I found a viral tweet from that night. "As a Grammy voter and an ex-major label artist, let me tell you, this had to be unbelievably scary, and I'm so proud of Chappell for taking this real risk for her peers." It has 320,000 likes. That's the same thing. Like most things that Chappell does, she ended up ruffling a little feathers with this speech, because a couple days later, an op-ed in The Hollywood Reporter would be published titled "Chappell Grown: The Misguided Rhetoric of an Instant Industry Insider" guest column. The Grammy winner for Best New Artist gets respect and appreciation for her creativity and gumption, but is far too green and uninformed to be the agent of change she aspires to be today, by Jeff Rabham. So I was planning on just reading this whole article, but I took notes after every paragraph, so I'm just going to read you each paragraph and then my notes about the paragraph. I tried to go into this article with an open mind, but I will say before reading it, there's lots of name dropping in the article, and he literally starts it with, "What would Prince say?" or "Tom Petty." They fought for their souls and for the rights to their music, putting their careers in jeopardy for what they believed was artistic integrity, the hallmark of greatness. And when you've been around long enough, you don't know that real substantive change, the real substantive change doesn't come from speeches. It comes from where the rubber meets the road, life and limb, harm's way, risking it all with action. Whether it's Prince wrestling back control of his masters at the height of his popularity, or Petty taking down his record label for raising prices on his LP and later funding his iconic album, Damn the Torpedoes himself, and then refusing to release it, skin in the game earns a seat at the table. But that table requires a willingness to leave blood on the floor and put your money where your mouth is. I just want to say right off the bat, these seem like different situations than what Chappell's talking about, so it got me confused when he's talking about like masters and stuff, but he's just trying to show that artists need to hold their record label accountable by not releasing things unless they demand that they do it their way, it seems. So he continues, it seems Roan wants to turn labels into landlords, bosses, and insurance providers. Have you ever tried to get your expenses reimbursed from a major label? Yet somehow you want them in charge of healthcare claims, as if labels want next year's winner to shout them down as slumlords in front of 60 million viewers. The architect of such a system, Motown's trailblazing Berry Gordy, received his fair share of criticism from Hitsville's unprecedented success, but artists were happy with their royalties and credits, right? Exactly. First, I want to say Chappell didn't say anything about housing or employee housing in her speech, so he's making a big leap, especially in this first sentence introducing her to the article, and he makes it sound way more aggressive than she said it on stage by saying she's shouting at them as slumlords in front of 60 million viewers. She pretty politely asked what she wanted, in my opinion. Okay, the article continues. Roan gets respect and true appreciation for her artistry and gumption, but is far too green and uninformed to be the agent of change she aspires to be today. She may evolve quickly, perhaps building a confab of power-wielding playmakers, or even pass the torch to another leader-to-be. But her Grammy speech was a hackneyed and plagiarized speech of an artist basking in industry love while broadcasting naivete and taking aim at the very machine that got them here. I would say this last sentence was his thesis for basically this whole op-ed. He will spend the rest of the article reiterating this point that she's too naive to know how to take a stand in the industry and make actual change, and she can't take aim at the music industry because she's profiting off of it. Also pointing out that she has fleeting fame. He continues, if labels are responsible for artists' wages, healthcare, and overall well-being, where does it end and personal responsibility begin? Should Chris Blackwell put a mint on her pillow and tuck her in at night too? There's no moral or ethical obligation by any standards that hold labels responsible for the allocation of additional funds beyond advances and royalties. So here's his other point. He thinks Chappell's disrespectful for asking for more from labels. He continues, Roan's call for record labels to pay artists a livable wage and provide healthcare was noble, but widely misinformed. Her rise to stardom, fueled by viral moments, major label backing, and an industry desperate for the next alternative pop starlet, proves she's no longer a struggling artist. She has to do something about it, rather than just talk about it. Change is waiting to be championed, not just announced. This point bothers me because Chappell is wanting to improve artists who are less fortunate than her and haven't had their viral moment. She's asking for healthcare for new and developing artists, also not mentioning Chappell was dropped from her record label. She basically had to rebuild her career from TikTok to get major label backing and release music under her new label. And Chappell being dropped from Atlantic Records during the pandemic is literally what she was talking about here. The next header, the outsider who became the establishment. Chappell isn't the first artist to frame themselves as an outsider railing against the system, but the moment she stepped onto the Grammy stage on Sunday night, she was no longer a scrappy indie artist fighting from the fringes. She became part of the establishment. It is disingenuous to cash a fat label check, ride meaningful industry support to mainstream success, and act like a kid who didn't get picked for dodgeball when your name is called. I'll break the news. You are no longer a revolutionary fighting for power, the oldest music cliche in history. You are poised to do great things for an artist and writers nonetheless. See, there's still room for puppy dogs and ice cream in this story. Roan is a product of the same system she's critiquing. Island, a subsidiary of Universal Music Group, self-touted as the world's biggest music company, didn't throw in the big bucks for fun. They ran the numbers, assessed potential revenue, and invested hard cash and company bandwidth into building her identity and sustainable business around her music. That's how the industry works. Record labels are businesses, not charities. And the deal is simple. They put up the money, take the risk, and in return, they get a cut of the profits. Could the system be better? Sure. Should artists get better deals? Absolutely. But Roan's speech lacked the nuance and industry awareness to build any consensus or even speak to the priorities of an artist's platform of issues. Demanding that labels pay artists like salaried employees ignores the fundamental economic structure of the business. No one is forcing artists to sign deals. For the 1 millionth time, if you don't like the terms, they can stay independent, own their masters, and take the financial risk themselves. I really don't like this whole section basically defending capitalism and defending that the system may have its flaws, but that's how it is, so you should just accept it and not push for maybe more money to be given to artists. Defending a system that doesn't protect and support people is scary, and he's basically saying here if she doesn't want to play by the rules, she can get out, and also acting like we can't improve a company that we contract with or work for, or whatever you want to call how artists sign to. These companies are super successful billion-dollar businesses, and he's defending them. Why? Capitalism. The next section, the realities of label deals and artist compensation. So, a label should get slapped for running their business like a business, while your advance goes to more important things, like a personal ayahuasca shaman from Detroit and a toilet that speaks 4 languages. Make it make sense. This paragraph, he's just throwing random accusations at Chappell that she's bad with money and wasting her money on stupid stuff. Why isn't Roan pushing for artists to put their money where their mouth is and donate 2 to 3% of their advances to a fund that supports fellow artists? She's now breathing rarefied elite-level air, and the time is limited to get the Beyoncés, Biebers, the Taylors, the Brunos on board, since the only way across the finish line is top-down funding. If they're truly concerned about a livable wage, maybe they should look at how their advances are structured first. I get what he's saying here, that other artists who support her cause should donate and make a fund or something, but why do random artists have to fund healthcare when labels could do it? Like, they make enough money. There's ways that the business could allocate funds. He's saying even though the labels have enough money, it should be other artists' responsibility to help support other artists when the label could do it. If they want the next Beyoncé or Taylor or Bruno, they need to support up-and-coming artists so they can have their needs met and make art that the company could then profit off of. Okay, he continues. Labels get and deserve plenty of criticism, but writers, the backbone of the industry, are suffering far worse than performing artists. So this whiny expectation that labels and/or publishers should be responsible for making sure artists function as fully formed adults is absurd and reeks of entitlement. Here's what Roan may not understand. Record deals are structured as investments, not salaries. When an artist signs a contract, the label provides an advance, which is essentially a loan. That advance covers recording costs, marketing, distribution, and, if negotiated, tour support. Major labels take at least a 7-figure risk on every artist, knowing that almost 60% never recoup a fraction of the cost and 15% cover the bills for their entire roster. So here he's defending that record labels are already taking risks on artists, paying them advances when they're contracting them to make music for the label, basically. Those 15% of artists that are covering the rest of the artist's advances are successful because they were supported by the label, and the entire system is built upon artists. So they wouldn't even have that money for advances without the artists. And then now he's saying that top 15% of artists should reinvest back into the up-and-coming artists when the labels could do that by themselves. He continues, should artists have better healthcare options? Absolutely. Sounds like a union thing to me. Most independent managers don't have insurance either. It's a flaw in the industry at large. Not just on the label side. Artists can negotiate their deals any way they choose to direct a portion of their advance towards healthcare coverage, just like they do with recording costs. Some already do. And a livable wage, that's a different conversation entirely. But it begins with this. Isn't an advance for that precise purpose? One might argue that 6-figure advances labels pay just for signing your name are livable. And they certainly buy you time to make your entire record you promised before you run out of cash, right? Let's be revolutionaries. Right after my direct deposit hits is a sham. Okay, I wanted to say, at the end of the day, Chappell just wanted to start a conversation around artists and how much they should be paid, and conversations lead to ideas, and ideas lead to action. He absolutely took the bait, though, fighting her opinion because he's bringing more attention to what Chappell is talking about, which is how artists should be paid more and maybe have health insurance. That's really all she said, and he's taking it so personally. Which I guess he's just defending capitalism here. Like I said, like he's saying lots of other industry people don't have insurance either. That's a problem too. There can be multiple problems. We should talk about them. And with free healthcare, we wouldn't even have to have this conversation. You know, there's lots of change that could be made. He starts the next section. Bill Maher had a point. Recently, Bill Maher's critique of Roan on Real Time hit the mark, calling her out for trendy performative activism that plagues young stars, when they make grand statements without understanding the complexities of the issue they're addressing. Okay, how many times do we have to call her naive? Maher's point, Roan is uninformed, not because she's untalented, but because she hasn't lived in the industry long enough to understand its intricate workings. Now annotated with Best Artist, she's experiencing the first wave of mainstream success. Like many others before her, believes she's in a position to dictate systemic change without offering tangible solutions. And herein lies the problem. Artists like Roan aren't changing the game. They're repeating the old ones. Young stars getting a taste of success, turning into critics of the machine that elevated them, and ultimately continuing to profit from that very system. Less talking, more doing. To champion struggling artists, leading by example is the only way. Actions speak louder than viral Grammy moments. And there are real ways to make a difference. Start a foundation that helps independent artists with healthcare and fair compensation, and demand your fellow Grammy winners match your funding. Offer mentorship programs for young musicians navigating label contracts. Put your money where your mouth is and invest in a new model of artist compensation instead of expecting labels to change overnight. Again, Chappell just wanted to start a conversation. She probably knew that everything wasn't going to change overnight from her speech, but she wanted to call attention to it. And who's to say she wouldn't do these other things? And she has started working with the foundation, which we'll get to, and maybe she planned to do that anyway. He continues, "This is what real industry disruptors do. Taylor Swift didn't just complain, she re-recorded her entire catalog and managed to gross $1 billion in her spare time. Prince reinvented his entire business model. Petty went on a creative hunger strike and led one of his best recordings hostage." So he's making the argument that other artists change the industry by putting their art on the line and taking big risks. But I feel like what he's failing to realize by saying this shouldn't be the norm. Like what Chappell was saying about how she was signed as a minor and she didn't realize she wouldn't be getting health insurance or whatever, compared to Taylor Swift signing as a minor, probably not realizing that she wouldn't get to own her masters, also not even probably fully realizing what her masters are or how much they would be worth if she was successful in the music industry. And yes, she found a creative way to kind of like not really do a loophole, but re-record, her Taylor's versions to make the money back from her master's sale. And it may help future artists be aware when signing deals like where their masters go, and bringing awareness is good, but it's not like Taylor changed the industry by setting a new precedent. So I mean, I wish I knew more about Prince's situation and Tom Petty's situation, but I feel like the way he uses Taylor Swift as an example, the main one I know, I don't like his use because it completely is kind of irrelevant to what Chappell was talking about. And both are problems that could be fixed. He continues, "That's how you force change. Putting it on the table, taking the hit to elevate everybody.
Labels, we got you, but do you got us?"
Roan lamented those words to the front rows. The words of a fighter not yet ready for a shot at the title. This isn't a game of laser tag at the mall with your friends. It's bare-knuckling warfare at sold-out Madison Square Garden. It's the toughest business on earth. The artists and managers wearing their grown-up pants know that the high-stakes game of commercial creativity has a talent plateau and shelf life. Altruistic and good intentions never overshadow reality. They got you until you no longer add value, and you got them until a different one tells you you're smarter and more talented and will prove it with more money. It's not cynicism, it's accepted. Stevie Nicks foreshadowed this with "Can I Handle the Season of My Life?" That pit of uncertainty that the passage of time brings. Labels and publishers cannot fix all that is broken or deemed evil by not picking up careers and lives that shatter when the window of opportunity slams shut. Own it. It makes seeing solutions easier when you realize it's just us. Right, Stevie? Again, the point that he's making here, Chappell knows well because she was dropped from her label during the pandemic. Labels don't always know what's best or what's profitable, and Chappell didn't feel supported when she was at her old label. I don't think it's also fair to say that she's in delusion that her career could end at any minute. He continues, "I bet if artists came to the table as partners with thoughtful solutions to protect our community in these extraordinary times, the faces will be listening just as they were this past Sunday. The industry matrix is far from perfect and often a dysfunctional clown show, but Roan isn't ready to be Neo. She alone cannot change what requires a village. Get off the Grammy stage and find the smartest people you know to help you build a platform. Use your celebrity to twist arms for good. Go to the homes of your industry partners and just listen. Otherwise, you're liable to become just another artist no one cares about in the industry burning their 15 minutes of fame for an echo chamber of applause. Great songs last a lifetime and more, and I am certain that the very real struggle our beautiful creative community faces are deserving of far more than a trending sticker for just one day." He took a low blow here, basically saying Chappell's going to be irrelevant and she's having her 15 minutes of fame. So that's the end of the article. This definitely wasn't a particularly flattering piece to Chappell. So basically an industry insider attacking Chappell kind of for no reason, tearing her down and also defending capitalism in the process. So Chappell wouldn't immediately respond, but another popular artist would enter the conversation, Halsey. And I love Halsey and she has great takes and she's never afraid to fight back at big institutions in the music industry. She's also beefing with the Grammys. That's a whole other story though. But here she comes in to defend Chappell, writing, on her Instagram story, at The Hollywood Reporter. I hope you're embarrassed of the absolute personal attack that you've ran, disguised as critical journalism. This is so far beneath the standard you should uphold as a publication. Jeff Rabham's ranting, seething tantrum is loaded with assumptions and accusations that generalize the experience of every artist to that of the most successful. Our industry is comprised of thousands of voices. The elite at the top of the class are not the example of a monolith experience for all artists. Advances, seldom awarded the way they used to be, are for affording survival because your commitment to making art, the label then sells and sometimes takes an absolute majority of, precludes you from working a day job. It's a game of investment, but the investment is towards producing the material. The person, the organic material that is producing that product needs access to things like healthcare. Shocking, I know. If you want to profit off of someone's art, then the artist should have basic living means to feel safe enough to create that art. An artist like Chappell, who has worked for over a decade, is not an instant industry insider, and to compare the payoffs of her actions to those of an industry titan with the power and financial leverage like Taylor Swift, when Chappell hasn't even spun around the block enough times to see the residuals of her long-earned but sudden success. Irresponsible for someone with your experience in the industry. Shame on you, bootlicking behavior. People were also in favor of Halsey's response to the situation. Here's a Twitter post with 54K likes that quote tweets Halsey's statement on Pop Crave and then says, "One thing about Halsey that I've noticed is that she's always defending women in the music industry. I remember when Taylor's masters got stolen from her in 2019, Halsey was one of the very first few artists to defend Taylor. And here she is being the first for Chappell." I love how Halsey's being a disruptor, like the whole pitchfork thing and the whole Grammy thing. So eventually Chappell would respond, posting on her Instagram story, "Hey at Jeff Rabham, want to match me 25K to donate to struggling dropped artists? My publicist is," and then she tags her publicist and says, "Let's talk, period." And then the background of her text is a screenshot of the Hollywood Reporter op-ed. And then she posts another story saying, "We'll keep everyone updated on the much awaited at Jeff Rabham response, and I will show receipts of the donations. Heart." And then she puts in smaller text at the bottom, "Mr. Rabham, I love how in the article you said put your money where your mouth is. Genius! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Let's link and build together and see if you can do the same. Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji." Does me saying the emojis help, or should I just leave it off? And Chappell would post another Instagram story saying, "In the meantime, here are some artists that deserve more love and a bigger platform." And then she shouts out Sarah Kinsley, Hemlock Springs, Devin Again, and Baby Storm. So this is when things get really unhinged. Jeff Rabham posts a long X post saying, "An open letter to at Chappell Roan and at Halsey." Before I even want to read this, now I'm going to say there was no need for him to re-engage with the situation. I guess he wanted to say why he wasn't going to donate money, but he could have just logged off, you know? We don't know him. He's not a public figure, really. He's just some music executive. I don't know. He didn't need to respond. Or he did not need to go this intense. He says, "Who would have thought it was a good idea to publicly challenge an educator to make a 25K one-upping contest? Really? Do you know how much teachers make?" This is bolded, by the way. Right idea pointed in the wrong direction. Someone around you should have advised you to put 25K before Sunday to challenge the industry to match. You would have collected from everyone, and they would have felt good doing it on Grammy night. Also, night spelled like N-I-T-E. Think how different the conversation would be today. Instead, you're challenging a guy who has given away thousands of hours to artists in need to a cash duel on social media. Your ego isn't allowing you, and your team isn't telling you what this manager would tell you. Stop dumpster diving and act like the agent of change you say you want to be. I'm neither the enemy nor the problem. I can shake my network of friends and supporters of the mission and have 25 people lined up as advisors and mentors and mental health providers in no time. But we are doing this instead. Okay, if you can do it so easily, do it yourself. Also, he's kind of doing this woulda, coulda, shoulda, she should have done this, and this would be more successful than this. We're talking about the speech she gave, and then you criticize the speech she gave. She can't go back in time. And she did say she's going to match the donation that she challenged you to. It would have made more money in the short term, probably, if she said, "Everyone, match me to donate 25K tonight," right? And some people probably would have done it, and they would have raised money for the cause. But that's not helping the system. That's not providing health insurance. Okay, he continues in bold. "My article was not a personal attack. It was a call to action and a warning. again bold, to avoid the pitfalls of many who have walked before you. It was a reminder, bold, that your status has changed. Your strength has different muscles, and when used effectively, can move mountains and affect change. I even offered several ways you could launch immediately. I never wanted you to feel attacked. My goal was to show an effective pathway forward. I stand behind my premise and my advice in the article, but I apologize to you openly if my words left you feeling attacked. If you weren't fucking capable of ascending and didn't have once in a generation kind of magic around you, I wouldn't bother. Consider that. Stop wasting those valuable muscles on me. Use your time. Okay, she made one story about you. Chill. Stop wasting those valuable muscles on me. Use your time to ask others, how do we get it going? She probably is. He's making so many assumptions. Sitting atop your platform, punching me and challenging me is about as productive as running on a treadmill and expecting to get somewhere. Move the conversation forward and focus on this foundation. I will happily help build it, fundraise for it, run it, recruit providers for it, get labels and pub support on it, or donate personally to it. That's what I do. If you and Halsey had directed your fan base to donate $1 to your Living Artists Fund for every hate-filled slur they sent me, you would have had enough funding in bold one day to cover healthcare for every single artist and writer in need for almost 2 years. The results aren't going to change. I'm not losing my job over this. I'm self-employed. I'm lucky to already have insurance, thankfully. My feelings aren't hurt. Years of artist management have cured me of those. And your fans are creative with their slurs, but I survived 3 teenagers of my own who are a lot meaner. Now what? I'm curious what slurs they're calling him, and it seems like he's just like a straight white guy, so... I mean, he says he doesn't care, but like, why bring it up if you don't care? You do care. Today, there's 25K more artists in need, bold, because of you than before I wrote the article, so that's progress. If you, your artist friends, and your fans want to attack me for pushing you to think and act like a champion, to lead by doing instead of finger pointing, and be the change you want to see, then carry on. Artists will lose, and you will fall prey to the very cliche I've warned you about in my piece that launched this shit show, your move. And this post has 110 likes. I will say most of the comments under his post are pretty negative. Also, him saying that there's 25K more artists in need because of you than before I wrote this article, so that's progress. Does he mean like because she didn't have her fans donate to her cause, that means there's 25K more artists in need? Or is he talking about some other thing here that I don't understand? It says think and act like a champion and to lead by doing, and she's literally leading by doing and donating to a cause, which is exactly what you told her to do. So Chappell would respond again in an Instagram story, more vague and kind of putting an end to the situation, saying, sharing my personal experience on the Grammy stage wasn't meant to be a crowdfunding band-aid, but a call to action to the leaders of the industry to step up, help us make change and protect their investments in a sustainable way. My mind will not change about artists deserving more than what is standard in the industry. Random dudes are allowed to criticize my Grammy speech, but they best put their money where their mouth is, otherwise move out of the way. And then she would announce that she's working with the charity Backline. Fans, y'all don't have to donate a penny. This is one of the many opportunities for the industry powers to show up for artists. There is much work to be done. Also showing her receipt for her $25,000 donation on February 9th. So popular musician Noah Khan would post on his Instagram story, hey at Chappell Roan, I'm going to match your $25K to support artists' access to healthcare. I'm inspired by you. Happy to help get the ball rolling. Money is where my mouth is. And then he has a written on money, and then it's pointing to his mouth. And later on February 8th, Charlie XCX would say, hey at Chappell Roan, I'm going to match your $25K to support artists' access to healthcare. I saw at Noah Khan Music say that he would do the same, so I thought I'd follow suit. Your speech at the Grammys was inspiring and thoughtful and from a genuine place of care. Happy to help get the ball rolling too. Money is where my mouth is. XX. And then she took a selfie and then did the arrow to her mouth and wrote money. So this situation did end up having a positive outcome. And on the Backline website, you can see people who have publicly supported the campaign. Some interesting names in here, looking at the list. Like scrolling through it, I see Hinterland Music Festival donated $25K, Live Nation donated $25K, Sabrina Carpenter donated $25K, Lav would donate $25K. Their headline is Mental Health and Wellness Resources for Music Industry Professionals and Their Families, building a safer and more supportive music industry. So I hope Backline is able to help artists with this big donation influx. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the situation. Chappell saw something missing in the industry when she was was an up-and-coming artist and wanted to voice those concerns to the people in charge and got backlash for it. Even though there was overwhelming support for her message, it seemed like he was mainly criticizing Chappell because he felt like she was kind of being ungrateful, trying to criticize the industry even though she just made a name for herself in it. I think that's a pretty unnuanced way to look at the situation. She's been in the music industry since she was 16 years old. She hasn't really worked much outside of working for record labels. She had to find a job during the pandemic, and she just wished that maybe artists could have more money. Reading the Backline website, it says that a lot of the people they help deal with mental health issues and want support for that. So I think calling for health insurance is also calling for like maybe therapy or things like that. Donating to this Backline charity is a solution, but it's a short-term solution and not a long-term industry-changing solution. I don't understand Jeff Rabham's response to the situation. He could have just said nothing. He's mad that he's getting criticism, but he put her on blast and brought himself into the conversation. And Chappell and Halsey, although they were criticizing what he was saying, I don't think they were disrespectful or hateful really in any way. They were just pointing out their flaws with his reasoning, like he was pointing out what he thought were flaws in Chappell's reasoning. I will say he went on an even farther downward spiral, posting stuff on LinkedIn and stuff. From what I can tell, this man is very wealthy, so him being like, I'm an educator. He's an educator, but he's also a music industry executive. And I find the weird fixation that he has on wanting artists to donate strange, because artists aren't the only people profiting from the music industry. There's enough money to go around, you know? So let me know what you think and have a good day. Bye.